Nicole served as Chief Learning Officer for 2 Deloitte businesses where she successfully orchestrated the transformation of curriculum and approach to talent development. She recently accepted the role of Director of Best Practices, Eminence, and Innovation. Congratulations. And she is a leader recognized for inspiring people to action in ways that create measurable impact in organizational performance. Nicole is considered a pioneer in designing innovative solutions for driving learning beyond the classroom.
Thank you, Nadira. I also just want to point out before I get started, I know I'm cutting a little bit into my time, that you're looking at the grown-up panel of speakers versus the rest of the speakers that have spoken to you. We're not going to live that down. All right, so let me tell you a little bit about the journey that Deloitte has taken and the impact and influence that the millennial generation has had in the workplace for us, particularly as it relates to our talent strategy. I'm actually I thought a lot about this and had not really thought about it before, although as part of many of the discussions about how we should be thinking about millennials as it relates to our talent strategy. It wasn't until I was asked to come speak here that I really started to think about it. And so I want to share a story with you. The story takes place at Deloitte University, and for those of you who don't know, Deloitte a few years back invested over $300 million in building a state-of-the-art facility in Westlake, Texas, where we opened the doors in the fall of 2011, and year over year we'll deliver of our over 5 million hours of learning, over 1 million of them are delivered at Deloitte University every year. I was actually there a month or so ago to observe one of our transition acceleration programs, and so these programs are designed to help our newly promoted employees transition into their new roles. And the design of them is pretty typical. It's 4 to 5 days, a simulation of a client engagement where we throw challenges, crazy plot twists at these engagement teams, the participants in the room, and expect them to navigate through that in a very time-constrained, high-pressure environment as a way to give them a dose of reality and what the job will be like once they get out there, hit the ground running, if you will. So it was day 3 of the program, and I was walking down one of our nicely appointed corridors at Deloitte University, and ran into a colleague I hadn't seen in a few years, Tom. And Tom happened to be one of the 70 faculty members on site. Our partners, principals, and directors serve as our faculty there. And I took the opportunity, since he's a client, to self-indulge and say, well, what do you think? What do you think of the program and how it appeals in terms of the level of engagement of the practitioners? And this group of practitioners that were there were in the millennial demographic. And he observed 3 things that he talked to me about. One was their level of confidence and their self-awareness of their strengths. And so in each of these rooms, there's teams, 5 to 6 teams made up of 5 to 6 practitioners. And you notice that very quickly, the discussion focused on what I'm good at. And as a result, they divvied up how they were going to handle the simulation based on their strengths. The other thing he said is that they're a very self-directed and resourceful group. When we designed the programs, we gave them a ton of resources and information, electronic, paper-based, you name it, to make sure that they felt they had all the information they needed to effectively navigate the client engagement. And what he noticed is that they quickly assessed whether or not there was value in those resources. For those that gave them value, that's where they spent their time. All the rest of the stuff we'd spent all sorts of time designing, they kind of threw off to the side. And then finally, the third thing that he talked about, which was actually outside of the classroom, was their level of engagement, and that their level of engagement exceeded or extended beyond the classroom, whether it be group personal fitness sessions before the morning, so early morning sessions at DFIT, which is our fitness center on site, where the teams would come together and go through a group exercise program, or after dinner, the later evening fireside chats with our leaders, where they would get 1 to 5 ratio of leader to participants and really engage in conversations. So his observations validated my own, and I felt good about that. I felt like we'd hit the mark in terms of this generation. And it actually got me thinking about where we started, Tom and I, which was way back in the early 2000s. And it was a debate on bricks versus clicks. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that debate, it was what shape and form should learning take in the future, considering the next generation workforce. And so the bricks proponents were the kind of field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. Let's build a really cool facility, and that will attract the workforce of the future. And then on the click side, it was no, no, no. This tech-savvy, work anytime, anywhere virtual generation. They're less interested in that. And what they actually want is the most innovative technology that they can leverage to learn. And in hindsight, and since things had come full circle, what I realized is that Deloitte University was actually a combination of both of those things. And so I felt pretty confident that we'd hit the mark there. It wasn't a one or the other. But it was actually even greater than that. It was kind of this intangible, because what Deloitte University actually does, beyond providing great development experiences for our people, is it engages the hearts and minds of our folks. And this generation, I think more than any generation before, has taught us the importance of that. Because, and someone mentioned it earlier, and I can't remember which speaker, but this notion of bringing your whole self to work, and that actually work and life are not two opposing forces. They're all part of a continuum. And so when I think about that, and I think about how that manifests itself in terms of our design, there were 4 design principles when we built out our curriculum and transformed our curriculum that were very much driven, of the 6 design principles, very much driven by the millennial generation. One was our learning needed to be leading edge. And not technology for technology's sake, but rather technology that before, during, and after our learning programs would actually enable our folks to collaborate and connect. So to extend, again, the learning beyond the classroom. The other thing was that it needed to be tailored to the learner versus kind of this lockstep, you are at this level, you must take these programs. Again, one of the earlier, I kept thinking, well, they all knew what I was going to talk about today. They're setting me up nicely. This generation also known as the me generation, right? And a lot of people thought of that as a negative connotation, a generation that has this sense of entitlement. We actually think that they were pretty right as it relates to development. It does need to be about me, the individual learner. We all have unique needs. And so we spent extensive time making sure that we had the breadth and depth of learning to appeal to all of those various needs. The third was that we needed to be outside in. So we need to be, and we continue to be, connected. It wasn't good enough. What we did 3 years ago has served us well, but, and that's the role, that's the role that I'm in now, is making sure that we're connected to what's happening out in the workplace today, in the marketplace, so that we can determine what do we want to continue to bring in to infuse innovation in the way we develop our people. And then finally, the 4th principle, which is very much driven by the millennials, is the notion that our leaders need to be leading the development. And this generation does not, or will not, have the benefit that the preceding generations had in terms of years of experience, right? The Gen Xers were just not a large enough generation to fill the roles, the leadership roles. And so how best to do that than to have them spend time with our leaders? Not in the typical way that they had in the past, which was this sense of sage on stage, right? I'm the leader, I'm going to bestow upon you all of my knowledge, and you will, through osmosis, it'll all sink in. But rather equipping our leaders with skills to help them facilitate our learners through discovery. So Socratic questioning skills, storytelling skills, and so that was, 4 design principles, again, that led us to where we are today. So, when I think about what our role is as folks who are responsible for the development of these people, this generation, it's a big responsibility. And we want to make sure that we learn to think like them, that we learn from them, but also anticipate where their thinking is going to take us in the future. And I, for one, would say that one of the things that I walk away with most is that this generation is not a generation interested in seeking and establishing status quo by any stretch of the imagination. They're kind of a group of fearless adventurers, right, who are looking for their careers to help them fulfill their lives. And so I view, and the Deloitte views it as our role to help them on that journey.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's wonderful just to hear those insights. But in addition, as you were talking about millennials driving thinking, I noticed all these ladies are wearing jeans and really fantastic shoes. It's a very millennial thing.
Took a lot of thought.
So that is imitating exactly what you're talking about. Next up, we have Heidi Jark, who leads the Fifth Third Foundation, where she oversees investments from the bank's own foundations, more than 20 other trustee foundations, and 60 private family foundations. Heidi manages the Fifth Third Charlotte R. Schmidlap Fund, the nation's oldest fund dedicated solely to women, and she was named to the 2013 list of YWCA Career Women in Achievement. Heidi was actually diagnosed with cancer at age 19, and that challenge provided not only a new outlook on life, but a deeper purpose as well, including the value of philanthropy, working across generations, and supporting diversity. We are so happy to have you, Heidi.
Thanks, Nadira. It's great to be here. So I'm going to talk about a couple of different things today. I'm going to talk a little bit about what our company is doing, but one of the other things that Nadira mentioned is my own kind of personal journey and how that kind of interacts with what I do and the relationships I have, not only with my company, but also with the high net worth individuals that I help advise on philanthropy. So, I wanted to talk about a few trends because I think it's really important. So in the old days, in fact, as we were all talking earlier, as we are the grown-ups here today, I'm actually the oldest one, so I'm actually not a Gen Xer, I'm even older than that. But I am the mother of a 6-year-old, so I like to think of myself as the hip mother of a kindergartner. But in the old days, when we talked about corporate giving, it was really about the dollars. People came to us, because they needed money, whether it was for marketing, for sponsorships, or for a philanthropic purpose. And that was good, and that's how we responded, and that's kind of the world that I grew up in corporate philanthropy. But there's been a real shift, and it's actually been a shift for the good. So a couple of things have happened. In companies, of course, we had a number of economic downturns in the 2000s, the most recent being in 2007 and 2008. And we realized that we had to do things differently. We also realized that money is not the answer to everything. And so corporate giving has really shifted from those financial resources to really utilizing what is our best asset, and that's our employees. If you think about our companies, especially when I think about Fifth Third, how do we take those 20,000 plus employees and how do we mobilize them to address societal causes? Because that's really how we're going to have impact. It's not just about the dollars we give, but it's kind of that thought capital that we bring to the table. And so a lot of things have happened in the corporate world that I think are really important for you to know. So one of the great things that has happened is we've seen more paid time for volunteering in the corporate world. That's actually risen from about 53% to 70% since 2007, and we hope it goes even higher. So that can be for short-term volunteering. In our company, we give quarterly opportunities for people to actually take time off from work during the workday, a novel idea, and go out and do something. Whether it's a group activity, we have a lot more what I would call organized philanthropy, where we get corporate emails, hey, on this date for 4 hours, we're going to go out and we're going to work for the Free Store Food Bank, or we're going to work for Crayons to Computers. Who wants to join us? In the old days, we would probably have thought, well, you just want to blow off work. But now we know it really has a deeper meaning, not only to those organizations, but also for the people who work in our places. And then also the long-term volunteers. We need someone to be on our board. And when I think back 10 years ago when I started in corporate philanthropy, the question used to be, can you get me your CEO or a senior manager to serve on our board of directors? Because they're the mover and the shaker, we're the person we need. What I find really interesting now, the question is, who is young and hip in your organization who's really good at social media? Because we need them to be in our marketing committee because that's where we're really lacking in our organization. And so there's been a real shift in terms of what we do as a company, but also kind of the requests that we get from organizations in terms of those volunteers. For us at Fifth Third, I think one of the things that all of our corporations have struggled with is just the kind of number of things that we get asked to do, whether it's financial commitment, whether it's volunteer. So one of our struggles is how do we kind of define who we are, how do we look at our corporate mission, and then how do we mobilize our resources, those great resources of our employees, to put them to work. And so for us, since the early 2000s, we've really been involved with financial literacy. We're a financial institution. Financial literacy is crucial. And I think we've all kind of learned valuable lessons from what happened in 2007 and 2008. So for us, it's really about going into schools early on with our Young Bankers Club, really taking our mission of who we are as a company and living that and working that every day. And so, for us to be in those classrooms to teach kids about financial responsibility, how to be successful in money management, how to save for college, how do you save for your first home, when are you ready for that commitment, how do you save for retirement? I mean, it really is important, and I'm excited as a company that we've really found that cause that aligns with our own mission. Someone said earlier it's okay to make money. It really is. But at the same time, I think living and breathing what we are as an institution is really important. So, when we all look at why we do it, it's because it's the right thing to do. So for us to be successful in how we work with millennials, it really has to come from the top down. I'm very excited, our company, that it really comes down from our CEO and our management team, that we need to embrace this, we need to figure out, because these are the future leaders, not only of our community, but these are the future leaders, these are the up and coming people in our company. So we've known for a long time that we do this because if we build better communities, we build better companies. For us, it's also about our client base. Our clients expect that of us. So a lot of our clients right now are the baby boomers, the Gen Xers, and if we want to, as a financial institution, want to continue to engage the next generations to be our clients, because that's why we're in the business, then we have to figure out, what do we need to do? How do we need to change our culture? Not just our actions, but our culture, so that we embrace the next generations, and how can we then keep them as clients and customers of our companies? Internal community. For all of our companies, employee engagement is the key to our success. In this really tight job market, we want to attract the best and brightest people to our companies. And as Mike said earlier, if I'm going to work somewhere for 10 to 12 hours a day, and I'm going to bring my whole person with me, I had better be passionate about what I do. And so how do we create that passion? How do we make ourselves that attractive workplace? And our employees basically demand it. I mean, it's really a part of who they are as people. And I'm a firm believer you bring your whole person to work. You cannot separate your personal life. And in fact, we were just talking the other day in my office, life really sometimes just gets in the way of work. And we have to deal what life is. A colleague of mine has a very, very sick friend who's dying of cancer. And I said, you don't need to be here. You need to be with your friend right now, because you're not going to get that opportunity again. And so we do it because we really demand it internally. It's about, how do we keep the best and brightest employees engaged with us? How do we not lose them in the future? And as I said, it's really about the right thing to do. So when I was asked to come today, it was not only to talk about kind of the corporate world and what we're doing as a company, but it was also because I think I have a unique story. And that's one of the things we know about millennials, is the whole storytelling process. So I'm going to show you a couple images. So what do Mount Rushmore, the Tyrannosaurus Rex, and grain fields have in common? So they actually are about me. I was born and raised on a farm in rural South Dakota. Most people who look at me don't think that I can drive a tractor or a bobcat or pull a calf, which I did on spring break this year. But this is me. So I was born and raised in a very small farming community. I was very lucky to have helicopter parents. My parents and I were best friends. But I grew up with a really strong work ethic, but I also grew up with parents who said, you tell us what you want to be, and we will figure out how to get you there. And I wanted to be a lawyer. And so my whole dream was to be a prosecutor, to put criminals in jail. So I went to college, and something interesting happened to me in college. I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. I was a sophomore in college when I heard the words, you have cancer. And to me, that was a moment in time that really changed who I am and what I wanted out of life. So for me, I'm one of the lucky ones who got to have a midlife crisis early. I got to have it at the age of 20. But for me, going through that experience and telling myself and telling those around me and telling God that if I get this chance to do it all over again, I'm going to get it right. And so for me, it became much more about, how do I actually do something good, not only for me, but how do I do something good for the world? I practiced law for about 6 years, and I realized that that was not my calling. Luckily for me, I found it in the world of philanthropy. I was able to then take my whole self to work every day. As a cancer survivor with a weak immune system, I actually take my whole self to work every day. I have to be conscientious about how I feel, what my environment is, and so from day one when I went into the workforce, that came with me. And so it's interesting, as we work with millennials, what's exciting for me is they're a lot like me. And so even though I'm a baby boomer, I really align myself. And as we were talking earlier, what excites us is the things that millennials want and demand out of life are the things that we wished we would have spoken about earlier. And so for me, it's just exciting to engage in this conversation and take those lessons and take them into my company, because I know if we all work together, we're really going to have the impact we need to have to make change in the world.
Oh, thank you so much, Heidi. And I will say, these are things we learned from you. So thank you for teaching us how to behave this way. Next up, we have Nicole Robinson, who's the head of the Mondelez International Foundation. And if you don't know Mondelez, we guarantee you have had one of their products.
That's right.
Nabisco, Ritz, Oreo, all the fun stuff. Nicole implements community programs designed to promote nutrition, healthy lifestyles, and volunteer service over 5 continents. She was appointed by Illinois Governor Pat Quinn to the state's Commission to End Hunger, and she has been a champion for food justice and ensuring that families in need have access to nutritious food. To give that issue a voice, she testified at a congressional subcommittee hearing considering the establishment of a White House conference on food and nutrition. Nicole and her colleagues also led a service effort, Delicious Difference Week, which is a fabulous name, which inspired over 26,000 employees across 72 countries to volunteer. So Nicole, welcome.
Great, thank you. And
Take it away.
Loved your talk, Heidi, so that's
Thanks,
great.
Nicole.
We have a lot in common, too. Welcome, everyone. I'm super excited to be here. And Mondelez International, we're a new company. We're a $36 billion startup. So we are a part of we are outgrowth of the split of Kraft Foods. Won't bore you with the details. You can Google that, but we're global. 80% of our business is outside of the United States. So we're a very global organization. That means that 80% of our employees are around outside of the United States. So this millennial thing is global for us. And Heidi's talk was a great setup, because one of the key pillars of our company, which I think millennials really care about, we have 5 priorities at our company, but the key priority that I'll call your attention to is we want to protect the well-being of the people on the planet. We think that strategy will fuel the growth of our business. So it's not just about making money for us. We have shareholders that we're accountable to, but a key pillar of what we're trying to do is to really protect the well-being of the people on the planet and to be good stewards. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means for Mondelez, and then why is that so attractive for millennials, because I feel like you guys care about this so much. And we view it as an innovation wheel. We leverage the business and the people across the organization and our products to drive change. So we can leverage sort of our business savvy and expertise to make a big social impact. That's really what we're trying to do. We do it across our supply chain. We work with cocoa farmers in Ghana because we buy a ton of cocoa to make our chocolate. And we work with our brands in different ways. We transform our portfolio. I'll talk a little bit about how we sort of spread joy activism through our employees, and then through a lot of unique partnerships. This is how we protect the well-being of the people on the planet. And when we think about millennials, I view millennials as a part of a larger group that we even think about not just inside our organization, but outside with our consumers, and we call them conscious citizens, right? They're a group of folks who care about the world, they care about what we're doing. They are, in fact, our biggest stakeholder. When we think about the growth of our business and our goal around protecting the planet, that's the key person involved. They care about things like the environment and hunger. They're online and they're savvy about being online. And they feel like when you're a big company, there's a big responsibility that comes with a big company. You just can't set up shop, make money, and destroy the planet. Right? They expect more from us. So they're making us accountable. They feel that we should be honest, transparency. And you know what I really appreciate about this group is that they know that we're not perfect. I think they know that we're on a journey, and most organizations are, as organizations and people. And as long as we're taking steps to get there, they feel good about that. So this is the group that we care about more than any other stakeholder group. On the job, we feel like when we want to recruit our next generation workforce, millennials are front and center. They want to work differently. They're more collaborative. They want to show up and not just do their job. The paycheck is not the motivator, right? That's not going to be the motivator. It's going to be how they interact with their managers and their teams. You know, where do they have the opportunity to use all their skills and talent and their creative genius to change the world? So that whole pillar around protecting the well-being of the people on the planet, we have 100,000 employees around the world who see that one plan on the page. So they all see the common goal. And probably my, my blessing and my curse is that all of them email me and say, what can I do? How can I sign up? Like, that's like the really biggest challenge. How do we accommodate that demand and that enthusiasm for the employees who want to do it? Okay, I'm trying to click. There we go. Okay, this is a little bit jumbled, this slide, but what we're calling this is our joy activism framework. So we know that at the base level, all 100,000 employees can get involved. We have a corporate internet, we have a Facebook, and there's ways for us as an organization to talk to each other, offer up new ideas. An idea can come from anywhere. The idea doesn't have to come from the chief marketing officer. The idea could come from the associate brand manager. It depends on whatever you're doing. If you have an idea, there's a channel to offer up your idea, and that's the beauty. It's those are some of the other insights around the millennials. That whole entrepreneurial spirit. We want to be an organization where you can bring that entrepreneurial spirit to work. When I was in college, I have that entrepreneurial spirit, but that was 20 years ago. That was hard to sort of bring that to life in the corporate world. Today, that's the kind of environment that we are trying to create at Mondelez International. We have tons of unifying volunteer events. Heidi talked a little bit about that. Those are great. What's interesting for us is that it's global. So what I find fascinating is that 5 years ago when we said to our teams in Russia, hey, let's go out and volunteer, because of the history of the politics and communism in Russia, they said, Nicole, that's an infringement on our personal rights. Why would we do that, right? That's an infringement. Why would we do that? Today, the markets like Russia are driving it. China, Indonesia, that's where the U.S., some of the U.S. employees are jaded. Maybe that's that stereotypical millennial sentiment about it's all about me and I don't care. The millennials in Brazil, in Argentina, those are the ones who are saying, sign me up, I want to do something, we can create change. They're driving the numbers. You mentioned our global service event, 72 countries, 26,000 people around the world. The biggest numbers are not in the U.S., they're outside the U.S. So that's like the crazy kind of good. Talk about building a bridge between countries and markets. I feel like that's what our work is doing in a way that we never would have imagined. And then this idea of high impact is really great from a global perspective, because what we're doing is sending employees to emerging markets to work on projects, marketers, food scientists, financial folks. And we're actually working to send, because we buy a ton of cocoa out of Ghana, so we're sending employees on 2-week missions to Ghana in October. So I'm like crazy excited about that one. And it's overwhelming because we're doing a pilot and nearly every person in the organization wants to go. Every time I talk to someone about this project, they're like, oh, can I go? I'm like, no, I need you to help me, but everyone can't go. So it's just like this enthusiasm is crazy. It creates, our partner organizations love it. People feel like, they are fulfilled and their job is rewarding. And yes, they can go create the great marketing plan to sell Oreos, but then they can also go to Ghana and understand where the cocoa came from for the chocolate to go in the Oreo. It's like making connections on levels that we've never seen before, talking to the farmers. We've brought farmers from Ghana to our offices. How transformative is that for an employee, right? So that's really the enthusiasm that we're trying to tap. And for me, hands down, it's going to be the key to retention. This next generation workforce, the next generation of leaders, that's the difference between the job hopping and going different places, that entrepreneurial spirit. You guys are smart. You can start your own thing, right? So how do we keep people? This is the foundation of it, quite frankly. And I think, they are the new storytellers. You guys are the new storytellers. You're on social media, you're doing things. These are a few comments from employees, but the passion is, ridiculous around this. And it's just about trying to keep up with it. So with that, That's all I have.
Fantastic. The passion is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Drop the mic.
Tweet that.
That's fantastic. So now we are going to go to some questions, and I'm so excited because it's not every day I get to do a panel like this where it's all women, and it's not about you being all women.
That's right.
you just naturally are fabulous, and you're the people we would want to be here with. So that's wonderful. But it's also wonderful to hear from the quote-unquote grown-ups. For you guys in the audience, yesterday I made, just in conversation chatting with Heidi and Nicole Tobin, I made a comment about something in the workplace, and I said, oh, but when we talk to grown-ups, it's so funny because X, Y, Z. And they were like, wait, are we grown-ups? Does that mean you're not grown-up? But that really is an important, I think, category that we think of, right, in terms of learning. We really do, as millennials, look up to you guys and want to sort of hear where we're doing things well and maybe even not so well. So I wonder, Nicole, if you could talk a little bit about this sort of study that you guys did and the information that you got from that. Was there anything in that that you were surprised about or that excited you or struck you in any particular way that you want to share with us?
Sure. Well, there's something in particular. I'm going to actually share two learnings out of it. So I think stereotypically what the general sentiment of millennials was about the boomers is that the boomers, were kind of know-it-alls and a bit resentful that this next generation was moving quickly. And what surprised us, and again, Deloitte University kind of serves as a petri dish for all sorts of social studies, but what surprised me in looking at the feedback from everyone who's come through Deloitte University, particularly the millennial generation, is they cannot get enough of our leaders. They cannot get enough of them. I mean, they keep saying, first of all, they're so appreciative of the time that they spend with them, and they want more of it. And so we're always trying to figure out how can we give them more exposure without making it feel too structured and formal in the process. So the fireside chats is one answer to that. On the flip side of that, what was equally surprising for me was, we were taking the boomer generation, and some Gen Xers as well, certainly in that population of leaders, and we were retooling them on how to grow and develop talent. And we have that group of folks now just banging down the door to be on faculty and to be able to spend time with this millennial generation. So, it goes to show kind of the stereotypes, and when you actually put groups together and have them interact together, you get rid of all of those stereotypes. So that, for me, is one of the big surprises that came out of the work that we've done at Deloitte University.
And it kind of goes back to storytelling, like
absolutely,
it's been mentioned before. But Heidi, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that idea of storytelling and sort of building a relationship over time with an organization. Because one of the questions that came in from a viewer was essentially how you get young people in these one-day or one-off volunteer experiences to take that home and create something meaningful and compelling out of it in the long term that the organization can continue to be part of, but that the millennial feels like they also take ownership of.
Yeah, so it's been a really interesting kind of journey for us as a company. So one of the things that I love is that a lot of our volunteer activities are actually driven by the millennials. So we have internally, especially where I work in Cincinnati, this group who gets together to really talk about what issues are important to them and to their own social group. And so they are the ones who kind of drive those activities for us, which I think is very great. But also for a lot of millennials, for me, I choose 1, 2, or 3 important causes that are important to me because I know I just can't be everything to everything, and our companies can't do that either. And so for them, I think it gives them an opportunity that they may have already self-defined what's important to them, but it gets them a good opportunity for a flavor of kind of what's going on in the community. And so that 4 hours, those short periods of time, not only has that feel-good part to it, but I also think gives them an entree into an organization they might not have known of before. So in the world I work in philanthropy, just even in our microcosm of Cincinnati, there are over 3,500 not-for-profit organizations. For me, it's not just about starting a new organization, it's about figuring out how organizations work better. So I know that because that's part of my workplace and my workspace and what I do. And so how do we help them to discover new charities that they might want to align with in a deeper way? So those are snapshots in time for our volunteers, but I think it gives them really good opportunity to kind of see what's out there. And so we try to be diverse in that, but we really let that group kind of drive where we're going to be and what we're going to do.
So they take ownership from the beginning.
They take ownership from the very beginning.
Yeah. which is wonderful. Nicole Robinson, I loved what you said about the journey and how millennials appreciate that you're on a journey. And I think that's something that's very hard for senior leaders sometimes to accept, because I hear all the time, we don't want to tell you what we're doing because we're not sure and we don't trust you with that information. So how do you as an organization get comfortable with communicating with your workforce in that way and giving them enough so that they can feel invested, but not so much that you're worried checking Twitter at 3 a.m. Every night, wondering what they're saying?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. And part of it is we're really trying to embrace this idea of collaboration. And I think that's how the millennials will actually transform our organization, because Mondelez, although we're a $36 billion startup, we're born out of a very old company, right? That's been around for a really long time. So we're on this cultural transformation, and millennials are leading the way, actually, because we want to be more collaborative. We know that our business will grow faster, we'll come up with more new innovative products, we'll change the world in a better way when we have new ideas and new ways of thinking. And the ideas don't come from one place. And that's actually how I feel about my work. As the head of the foundation, I'm not the gatekeeper of the community. I'm the facilitator. So anyone who comes in my office and has a passion and an idea, I'm going to help them try to fulfill it. It's about enabling. We have 300 what I call community champions around the world. It's a global group. They all have passion for this work, so they lead. They lead with organizations and partner. They lead internally, right? For our organization, any big project, it's a cross-functional, collaborative team, multi-generation, ethnicity. Everybody is bringing something to the table, and it can be valuable. And I think that's really going to be the thing that transforms how we work. And it's going to be critical to our success. And that's the part, actually, that's hard for the senior leader, because they're used to sort of, there's a hierarchy. There's a hierarchy, there's a way we do things. And actually, collaboration requires us to slow down, right? It requires us to be a little reflective, and that's kind of tough, in this fast-paced now environment. But we're committed to it, and I think that's going to be the key to success.
And there's a business case for it, right? That's exactly the thing you always have to underscore. It's not just love millennials for the sake of how lovable we are.
It's how we fuel the business. The new ideas are going to come through this collaboration.
Now, I would be remiss, since I have all of you grown-ups here, if I allow this to be rah-rah millennial session without saying, what's hard about this group of people? What are the struggles? And if you're talking to the leaders out there who are dealing with this generation, who kind of want to throw their millennials out the window, how do you let that person, how do you give that person some hope and talk to them about the experience they're having, but also about how to get millennials really involved in work in a positive way when there are some struggles? Talk to us about why it's tough. Look at their faces, ladies and gentlemen.
It's interesting, because I have a millennial on my team, and I love her to death, and she's watching today. Hey, Carrie. So it's interesting, because I really had to change just my own personal way about how I work. I travel a lot. I'm out of the office a lot. And so what I wasn't realizing is that the personal time that I spend with Carrie and this individual is very important to her, because she wants to learn. And so I was kind of going on the old adage of just how I worked, and it was, when I was an attorney first, I was stuck out on my own and I just had to figure it out. And so for me, it's actually been a real learning process, but I've also seen myself grow as a person. And so for all of those who are looking for our own personal development, this is a real opportunity for us. So yeah, we might be frustrated by them, but I've become much better about separating work and my personal life, which I wasn't good about before. And so I think I've learned a lot of valuable lessons from them. I think I'm a much happier person. I think I'm a more productive person. I've learned that just because you're not in the office doesn't mean you're productive. I mean, I know that from being on the road. I know that from being a working mom who has an amazing spouse who also travels. And so, the things that I demand in my work are some of the things that they demand. They're just taking it to a new level. And so I would say to people who are frustrated by it, look at this as an opportunity, because that's really what it is. It's not a challenge. And think about what not only it will do for you, but think about what it will do for the greater good, not only for our companies, but the communities we live in. And I think if you take that positive spin on it, it just changes everything.
They're like, thank goodness.
Thank goodness.
Anyone else want to weigh in on that before
Well,
we?
so, and this is, kind of much smaller piece of the big picture. And I, like Jose earlier this morning, will come out of the closet and say that I'm a millennial living in a Gen Xer's body. So I don't understand sometimes the tension that some of the leaders that I have conversations with have. But I'll share with you one that recently came about where one of the partners, engagement partners at a client site, all the folks are in a room. She says she walks into the room and all of a sudden, all the staff is sitting there and they're IMing clearly with each other or texting. We're very much an IM culture though, instant messaging culture. Like I need to explain that to you guys. Sorry. So for me, it's a matter of maybe developing a sensitivity for the fact that you communicate in a very different way than the preceding generations did. And so there's a discomfort for older generations who aren't necessarily comfortable, aren't as tech savvy and aren't as comfortable with that. So, my only suggestion might be offer to help them learn that, right? So don't just wait for them to ask you. You can offer to help support them in understanding kind of what the hip and happening best ways of communicating are and what the benefits are of communicating in that way. That said, it's not always appropriate to use that form of communication, right? And that's one of the struggles that I would say as a corporation we have, which is what does professional communication, what form should it take? Because we notice things like in emails, instead of spelling out the you, you put the letter U, and I'm guilty of doing that myself. But when you're sending emails to clients, you can't do that, right? There's certain etiquette that you need to have. But that's just something that I'd throw out as an observation.
But a pro tip along those lines is millennials love structure. As much as people say, oh, they're such an unstructured group, when you want them to spell things out, tell them.
Right.
They will do that. Now, actually building on this idea of the ways in which all our interests are aligning, because a lot of research shows that, right? Boomers are now at the stage of their careers where they can get all of these things that they would have wanted when they were younger, like on and off ramps to careers and everything else. So you see millennials and boomers kind of coming together in what they're looking for. But I'm really curious about the global piece, Nicole Robinson, because I think that's some place where folks still don't necessarily buy into the belief that millennials across the globe are the same. So take a few minutes, not a few minutes, a little time and talk to us about that.
Sure. I think it gets back to that entrepreneurial spirit is global, right? You have communities in India and Brazil and Mexico where social innovation is the way. The two biggest public health issues, hunger and obesity, the highest rates of them are in the emerging markets. Hunger has always been there. Obesity now is double digit in those markets. You talk about economic development. The way for economic development in some of these markets, going from $2 a day to $4 a day is going to be through micro enterprise, right? Right. So all this idea of entrepreneurship, starting your own business, actually seeing the leaders in some of the emerging markets, the profile is different. Sometimes it is a lot younger, right? Because you have these highly educated, multi-language kids who are in there doing it because the competition is fierce. There's so the growth, all of these, not just Mondelez, but our peer companies, they're all growing in these emerging markets. And that entrepreneurial spirit, to me, I see that across the board. I'd say secondly, the communication piece, being connected. We, in the Philippines, the way we communicate with employees to give announcements is not the intranet, it's text message. We do the SMS messages to communicate. So in markets where that makes sense, that's what we do. So I think that the commonalities are actually there.
And getting more every day. So the future is now. And on that note, please join me in thanking these wonderful women for chatting with us.